They told us it was safe. They told us it could never happen again. After the arena bombing, after the promises of tighter security, after millions spent on surveillance and intelligence, Manchester was reassured. Never again. But then came the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and a synagogue became the stage for something we were told would never happen. The official story is simple. A lone man, armed with threats, stormed a synagogue and turned prayer into terror. But if that's all you believe, then you haven't heard the real story. What happened that day is not just about one attacker, one building, or one community. It's about warnings ignored, neighbors silenced, police scrambling, and a chain of events that should shake every one of us. Because here's the truth. This wasn't random, it wasn't sudden, and it wasn't without signs. Days before the attack, local residents reported a strange figure lurking near the synagogue. Surveillance cameras captured him pacing the same streets over and over. Online, his name had already been flagged in extremist circles. Yet when the moment came, he walked in, unchallenged, chose the holiest day of the year, and brought fear into a place meant for prayer. And while the cameras focused on the front of the synagogue, something else unfolded quietly just out of sight. Arrests in nearby streets. Men dragged from cars, handcuffed in alleyways, questioned under torchlight. Why were they there? Why were they in contact with him? The official line called them secondary suspects. But for residents who saw them taken away, it was confirmation of what they feared most. He was not alone. Think about what that means. For years, authorities reassured us these attackers were isolated individuals. Yet, here we have a man threatening to detonate a bomb inside a synagogue, while at the same time others are arrested only blocks away. Is that isolation, or is that something far more coordinated than officials want to admit? Inside the synagogue, the fear was unimaginable. Witnesses described him shouting, pacing, claiming he had explosives strapped to his chest. Police outside had no choice but to believe him. They shouted warnings to the public, "He has a bomb, stay back." Imagine being in that moment, knowing your loved one is inside, knowing the man who claims to hold their lives in his hand is unstable, unpredictable, and armed with nothing but rage. But this story is not just about him. It is about the silence that allowed him to reach that point. Teachers who noticed his change in behavior but said nothing. Friends who saw his online posts but shrugged them off. Neighbors who whispered about strange activity in his flat but never pressed further. Everyone saw something. No one did enough. The location itself speaks volumes. A synagogue surrounded by family homes, schools, corner shops, a neighborhood that on any other day would be full of laughter, children cycling, parents chatting by garden gates. But on that day, it became a war zone. Helicopters circling overhead, armed officers pointing rifles from behind parked cars, snipers on rooftops, doors smashed in as police searched for accomplices, a whole community locked down, not knowing if the next second would bring gunfire or an explosion. One mother, trapped outside the barricades, whispered into her phone, "My children are inside. Please, please save them." Another resident, living only 2 streets away, filmed as police forced 2 men to the ground, cuffed them, and dragged them into vans. That footage was never broadcast widely. Why? Why did so many details vanish into silence? And yet, what makes this even more unsettling is the choice of timing. The attacker did not choose an ordinary weekday. He chose Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. A day when the synagogue was full. A day when security might be stretched thin. A day loaded with symbolism. That was not coincidence. That was calculation. And that choice tells us this was not just an act of violence. It was a message. Hours dragged on. Negotiators tried, failed, tried again. The man demanded attention. He wanted to be heard. Meanwhile, police sources quietly admitted to journalists that they had detained more people in the area. At least one arrest was made in a side street parallel to the synagogue. another in a nearby alley. And yet, after the siege ended, very little was said about these individuals. Were they released? Were they charged? Were they connected to the plan? The silence surrounding those arrests is as loud as the gunshots that threatened to erupt that day. For the families trapped inside, every minute felt like an eternity. Some whispered final prayers. Others tried to comfort children who couldn't stop crying. An elderly man fainted, his body slumping to the floor, while others tried desperately to revive him in the middle of the chaos. Outside, parents screamed at the barricades, demanding the police storm the building. Others begged for calm, insisting lives would be lost if force was used. And yet, the attacker's unpredictability left negotiators cornered. He was erratic. He was loud one moment, silent the next. He threatened to detonate, then shifted to rambling monologues. Nobody knew what he truly had strapped to his body. Was it a real bomb? A bluff? That uncertainty made him more dangerous than explosives ever could. Here's the twist no one wants to confront. While police were locked in a standoff, intelligence officers were scrambling to piece together his past. And what they found was damning. This was a man known to them, a man flagged, monitored, noted, and still free. Authorities had visited him before. They knew of his instability. They knew of his ideology. And still, on that day, he was able to walk into his synagogue on Yom Kippur and hold an entire congregation hostage. So ask yourself, how many more like him are out there? How many names sit in intelligence files marked as concerning but not acted on? How many are walking our streets waiting for the moment to turn a community's sacred day into a nightmare? The siege lasted hours. The tension was unbearable. The neighborhood transformed into a military zone. Arrests in side streets hinted at something bigger. Survivors whispered final words. And still, the world was told this was a lone attacker. But was it? Or are we being told only the part of the story that is easiest to swallow? This is not just about one synagogue. This is about a system stretched thin, about communities ignored, about intelligence lost in bureaucracy, and about the price of silence. Stay tuned. Subscribe if you haven't already, because what you're about to hear next, how the siege ended, who walked out alive, and what police revealed afterward will force you to question everything you've been told so far. Because Manchester's synagogue siege is not just a headline, it is a warning. And we're only beginning to uncover the truth.